Hello, kiddos. We are in chapter 12 right now. And so we are going to go over, looks like Mongols, Eurasia, and its aftermath. So, really going to cover this kind of early part, first chapter of what the Modern World History AP unit covers. So, we got to unpack a lot, but, should learn quite a few new things today. Here is our instructional objectives for what we're going to go over historically. So, account for the magnitude and speed of the Mongol conquest, describe the benefits that resulted from the Mongol integration of Eurasia into the Mongol Empire, compare and contrast the effects of the Mongol rule on Russia and the lands of Islam with the effects on East Asia, and then identify points of continuity and discontinuity in the transition from Mongol to Ming rule in China. All right, so let's talk about the rise of the Mongols from about 1200 to about 1260. I'm going to first look at the nomadism in Central and Inner Asia. Okay, so nomadic groups depended on scarce water and pasture resources. In times of scarcity, conflicts occurred, resulting in the extermination of smaller groups and the formation of alliances and outmigration. Around the year 1000, the lands inhabited by the Mongols experienced unusually dry weather, with its attendant effects on the availability of resources and pressures on the nomadic Mongol tribes. Mongol groups were strongly hierarchical organizations headed by a single leader or Khan, but the Khans had to ask that their decisions be ratified by the council of the leaders of powerful families. Powerful Mongol groups demanded and received tributes and goods and in slaves from those less powerful. Some groups were able to live almost entirely on tributes. The various Mongol groups formed complex federations that were often tied together by marriage alliances. Women from prestigious families often played an important role in negotiating these alliances. Wives and mothers of rulers traditionally managed state affairs between the death of a ruler and the selection of a successor, often working to secure a relative to that position. The seasonal movements of the Mongol tribes brought them into contact with different religions such as Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, things like that. The Mongols accepted religious pluralism. Mongol Khans were thought to represent the sky god who transcended all cultures and religion. Khans were thus conceived of as universal rulers who both transcended and used the various religions of their subjects. That was kind of one of their main important items that made them different. And anytime a strong ruler, oppressive ruler comes in, they try to change all society, try to get rid of religion or change religion. The Mongols were extremely intelligent because they didn't do that. They made sure everybody they basically accepted all religions, and that just simply made people happier. Religion is, even to this day, still close to people's hearts. And when you don't change that, you're more likely going to get people on your side. So now let's talk about Mongol conquests. Between 1206 and 1234, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols conquered all of North China and were threatening the southern Song region. During this period and onward to about... Sorry, I just want to make sure my microphone was on. This period to about 1265, the Mongol realms were united because the Khans of the Golden Horde, the Jagadi domains of Central Asia, and the Il Khans all recognized the authority of the Great Khan in Mongolia. When Kublai declared himself Great Khan in 1265, the other Mongol Khans refused to accept him. Kublai founded the Yan Empire with its capital at Beijing in 1271. In 1279, he conquered the southern Song. After 1279, the Yan attempted to extend its control to Southeast Asia. Annam and Champa were forced to pay tribute to the Yan, but an expedition to Java ended in failure. Historians have pointed to a number of factors that may have contributed to the Mongols' ability to conquer such vast territories. These factors include superior horsemanship, better bows, and the technique of following a volley of arrows with a deadly cavalry charge, almost like a blitzkrieg as to what Hitler did much later. One of the reasons the Mongols' success included their ability to learn new military techniques, adopt new military technology, and incorporate the non-Mongol soldiers into their armies. Their reputation for slaughtering all those who would not surrender, and their ability to take advantage of rivalries among their enemies, all were factors as to why they were so successful. Move to overland trade and the plague. The Mongol conquest opened overland trade routes and brought about an unprecedented commercial integration of Eurasia. The growth of long distance trade under the Mongols led to a significant transfer of military and scientific knowledge among Europe, the Middle East, China, Iran, and Japan. However, diseases, including the bubonic plague, spread all over the trade routes of the Mongol Empire. The plague that had lingered in Yunnan, which is in now southeast China, was transferred to central and north China, to Central Asia, to Kaffa, and from there to the Mediterranean world. And that is how it spread into Europe, where it was extremely deadly. Came through Italy, the ports there in the Mediterranean came through Italy, and then basically took over the took over a lot of Europe. This is a great map that shows you guys where the different groups were at. You see the Ilkhan there, the Golden Horde, the Empire of the Great Khan, the Southern Song region, which was mentioned several times. So it gives you an idea, you have a picture in your mind of where everything's at. So let's talk about the Mongols and Islam, and talk about Mongol rivalry first. In the 1260s, the Ilkhan Mongol Empire controlled parts of Armenia and all of Azerbaijan, Mesopotamia, and Iran. Relations between the Buddhist and shamanist Ilkhan Mongols and their Muslim subjects were tense because the Mongols had murdered the last Abbasid caliph, and because the Mongol religious beliefs and their customs were contrary to those of Islam. At the same time, Russia was under the domination of the Golden Horde, led by Genghis Khan's grandson Batu, who had converted to Islam and announced his intention to avenge the last caliph. This led to the first conflict between Mongol domains. During this conflict, European leaders attempted to make an alliance with the Ilkhans to drive the Muslims out of Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine, while the Ilkhans sought European help in driving the Golden Horde out of the Caucasus. These plans for an alliance never came to fruition because the Ilkhan ruler Ghazan became a Muslim in 1295. Islam and the state. The goal of the Ilkhan was to collect as much tax revenue as possible, which it did through the tax farming system. In short term, the tax farming system was able to deliver large amounts of grain, cash, and silk. In long term, overtaxation led to the increases in the price of grain, a shrinking tax base, and by 1295, a severe economic crisis. Attempts to end the economic crisis through tax reduction programs, coupled with the introduction of paper money, failed to avert a depression that lasted until 1349. Thus, the Ilkhan domains fragmented as Mongol nobles fought each other for diminishing resources, and Mongols from the Golden Horde attacked and dismembered the Ilkhan Empire. As the Ilkhan Empire and Golden Horde declined in the 14th century, Timur, the last Central Asian conqueror, built the Jagadai Khanate in Central and Western Eurasia. Timur's descendants, the Timurids, ruled the Middle East for several generations. Now, culture and science in the Islamic Eurasia. In literature, the historian Giovanni wrote the first comprehensive account of the rise of the Mongols under Genghis Khan. Giovanni's work inspired the work of Rashid al-Din, who produced the History of the World that was published in a number of beautifully illustrated editions. Rashid al-Din, a Jew converted to Islam, who served as advisor to the Ilkhan ruler, was a good example of the cosmopolitan of the Mongol world. Timurids also supported notable historians, including the Moroccan Ibn Khaldun. Muslims under the Mongol rulership also made great strides in astronomy, calendar making, and the predictions of eclipses. Their innovations included the use of epicycles to explain the movement of the moon around the Earth, the invention of more precise astronomical instruments, and the collection of astronomical data from all parts of the Islamic world and China for predicting eclipses with greater accuracy. In mathematics, Muslim scholars adapted the Indian numerical system, devised the method for indicating decimal fractions, and calculated the value of pi more accurately than had been done in classical times. Muslim advances in science, astronomy, and mathematics were passed along to Europe and had significant effect on the development of European science and mathematics. So here's Western Eurasia in the 1300s. Give you guys kind of what was going on in the different kind of that connection piece between Europe, Asia, North Africa, things like that. All right, so regional responses in Western Eurasia. Let's talk about Russia and the rule from afar. After they defeated the Kievan Rus, the Mongols of the Golden Horde made their capital at the mouth of the Volga, which was also the end of the overland caravan route from Central Asia. From the capital, the Mongols ruled Russia from afar, leaving the Orthodox Church in place and using Russian princes as their agents. As in the Mongol realms, the main goal of the Golden Horde was to extract as much tax revenue as possible from their subjects. Because Prince Alexander of Novgorod had assisted the Mongols in their conquest of Russia, the Mongols favored Novgorod and Moscow, ruled by Prince Alexander's brother. The favor shown to Novgorod and Moscow, combined with the Mongol devastation of the Ukrainian countryside, caused the Russian population to shift from Kiev towards Novgorod and Moscow emerged as the new center of Russian civilization. Some historians believe that the Mongol domination had a negative effect on Russia, bringing economic depression and cultural isolation. Other historians argue that the Kievan state was already declining when the Mongols came. The overtaxation of the Russians under the Mongol rule was the work of Russian princes. Russia was isolated by the Orthodox Church, and the structure of the Russian government did not change appreciably under the Mongol rule. Ivan III, the Prince of Moscow, ended Mongol rule in 1480 and adopted the title of Tsar. And then you have some new states in Eastern Europe and Anatolia develop. Europe was divided between the political forces of the papacy and those of the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II. Under these conditions, the states of Eastern Europe, particularly Hungary and Poland, faced Mongol attacks alone. The Mongol armies that attacked Europe were actually an international force, including Mongols, Turks, Chinese, Iranians, and Europeans, led by Mongol generals. After the Mongol withdrawal, Europeans initiated a variety of diplomatic and trade overtures towards the Mongols. Contact between the Europeans and the Mongols increased from the 13th century and brought knowledge of geography, natural resources, commerce, science, technology, and mathematics from the various parts of the Mongol realms to Europe. At the same time, Mongol invasions and the bubonic plague caused Europeans to question their accepted customs and religious beliefs. Most notably, they questioned the belief of the Catholic Church and the Pope. The rise and fall of the Mongol domination in the 13th and 14th centuries were accompanied by the rise of stronger centralized states, including Lithuania and the various Balkan kingdoms. Lithuania, in particular, was able to capitalize on the decline of the Mongol power to assert control over its neighbors, particularly Poland. During the period of Mongol domination, Anatolia functioned as a route by which Islamic culture was transferred to Europe via Constantinople. The Ottomans, who established themselves in eastern Anatolia in the 1300s but were kept in check by the Timurids, expanded eastward in the 1400s and conquered Constantinople in 1453. And so now let's talk about the Mongol domination in China, specifically the Yuan Empire. Kublai Khan understood and practiced Chinese traditions of government. He constructed a Chinese style capital at Beijing and a summer capital at Chengdu, where he and his courtiers could practice riding and shooting. When the Mongols came to China, it was politically fragmented, consisting of three states. These three states included the Tangut, which were Tanggut, the Jin, Jin, and the Southern Song. The Mongols unified these states and restored or preserved the characteristics of Chinese government. The Mongols had also made some innovations in government. These included tax farming, the use of Western Asian Muslims as officials, and a hierarchical system of legally defined status groups defined in terms of race and function. Under the Yuan hierarchical system, Confucians had a relatively weak role, while the status of merchants and doctors were elevated. Under the Mongol rule, China's cities and ports prospered, trade recovered, and the merchants flourished. Merchants organized corporations to pool money and share risks. This is where you see the rise of modern stock companies. The flourishing mercantile economy led the Chinese gentry elite to move into cities where a lively urban culture of popular entertainment, vernacular literature, and the Mandarin dialect of China was developed. In rural areas, cotton growing, spinning, and weaving were introduced to mainland China from the Hainan Island, and the Mongols encouraged the construction of irrigation systems. In general, however, farmers in the Yuan were overtaxed and brutalized while dams and dikes were neglected. During the Yuan period, China's population declined by perhaps as much as 40%, with northern China seeing the greatest loss of population. However, the Yangtze Valley actually saw a significant increase. Possible reasons for this pattern included warfare, the flooding of the Yellow River, north-south migration, and the spread of diseases, including the bubonic plague in the 1300s. Then you have the fall of the Yuan Empire. In 1368, the Chinese leader Zhu Yangzhang, Yuanzhang, brought an end to years of chaos and rebellion when he overthrew the Mongols and established the Ming Empire. The Mongols continued to hold power in Mongolia, Turkestan, and Central Asia, from which they were able to disrupt the overland Eurasian trade and threaten the Ming dynasty. The Ming Empire was also threatened on its northeastern borders by the Jurchens of Manchuria. The Jurchens, who had been influenced by Mongolian culture, posed as a significant threat to the Ming by the late 1400s. So the Ming, we're gonna move over to the early Ming Empire, and then I think we're getting pretty close to being done. I think we have one more section after this. Former monk, soldier, and bandit Zhu Yangzhang established the Ming Empire in 1368. Zhu's regime established its capital at Nanjing and made great efforts to reject the culture of the Mongols, close off trade relations in Central Asia and the Middle East, and reassert the primacy of primacy of Confucian ideology. At a deeper level, the Ming actually continued many institutions and practices that were introduced during the Yuan. Areas of continuity include the Yuan provincial structure that maintained closer control over local affairs, the use of hereditary professional categories, the Mongol calendar, and, starting with the reign of the Yongle Emperor, the use of Beijing as the capital. Between 1405 and 1433, the Ming dispatched a series of expeditions to Southeast Asia and the Indian Ocean under the Muslim Eunuch Admiral Zheng He. The goals of these missions were to reestablish trade links with the Middle East and bring Southeast Asia countries and their overseas Chinese populations under control of China, or at least under their influence. Zheng He's expeditions retraced routes that were largely known to the Chinese already. The voyages added as many as 50 countries to China's list of tributaries. However, there was no significant increase in long-distance trade and the voyages were overall not profitable. Many historians wonder why the voyages ceased and whether or not the China had gone could have gone on to become a great mercantile power or acquire an overseas empire. In answering this question, it is useful to remember that Zheng He's voyages did not use new technology, were not profitable, were undertaken as a personal project of the Mongol emperor, and may have been inspired partly by his need to prove his worth. The end of Zheng He's voyages may also be to related to the need to use limited resources for other projects, including coastal defenses against Japanese pirates, and defense of the northern borders against the Mongols. The end of Zheng He's voyages was not the end of Chinese seafaring. It was only the end of the state's organization and funding of such large-scale expeditions. This move to technology and population. The Ming saw less technological innovation in the Song in the area of metallurgy. The Chinese lost the knowledge of how to make high-quality bronze and steel. Reasons for the slowdown in technological innovation include high cost of metals and wood, the revival of the civil service examination system that had rewarded scholarship and administration, a labor glut, and the lack of pressure from technologically sophisticated enemies, and a fear of technology transfer. Korea and Japan have moved ahead of China in technological innovation. Korea excelled in firearms, shipbuilding, meteorology, and calendar making, while Japan surpassed China in mining, metallurgy, and novel household goods. And then you have the Ming actual achievements, because we're kind of down on that right now. The Ming was a part of the great wealth and consumerism and cultural brilliance. One aspect of the Ming popular culture was the development of vernacular novels like Water Margin and Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The Ming was also known for porcelain making and other goods, including furniture, lacquered screens, and silk. This is the area that we're talking about right here, and then I love that little map there at the bottom because it shows you Zheng He's routes. So let's talk about centralization of centralization of militarism in East Asia, and then this is our actual last section. So let's talk about Korea from the Mongols to the Yi. Korea's leaders initially resisted the Mongols' invasion, but gave up in 1258 when the king of Koryo surrendered and joined his family with the Mongols by marriage. The Koryo kings then fell under the influence of the Mongols, and Korea profited from exchange with the Yuan, in which technologies including cotton, gunpowder, astronomy, calendar making, and celestial clocks were introduced. The Koryo collapsed shortly after the fall of the Yuan and was replaced by the Yi dynasty. Like the Ming, the Yi reestablished local identity and restored the status of Confucian scholarship while maintaining Mongol administrative practices and institutions. Technological innovations of the Yi period included the use of movable type and copper frames, meteorological science, a local calendar, and the use of fertilizer. They also used engineering of reservoirs. The growing of cash crops, particularly cotton, became more common during the Yi period. Koreans were innovators in military technology. Among their innovations were patrol ships with cannons mounted on them, gunpowder arrow launchers, and armored ships. They also experienced Japanese then experiences a political transformation. The first unsuccessful Mongol invasion in 1274 made the decentralized local lords of the Kamakura, Japan, develop a greater sense of unity as the shogun took steps to centralize planning in preparation for the expected second assault. The second Mongol invasion happened in 1281, was defeated by a combination of Japanese defensive preparations and a well-timed typhoon. The Kamakura regime continued to prepare for further invasions. As a result, the warrior elite consolidated their position in Japanese society, and trade and communication within Japan increased. But the Kamakura government found its resources strained by the expense of defensive preparations. The Kamakura shogunate was destroyed in a civil war, and the Ashikaga, Ashikaga shogunate was established in 1338. The Ashikaga period was characterized by a relatively weak shogunal state and strong provincial lords who sponsored the development of markets, religious institutions, schools, and increased agricultural production. The delicate artistry and the simple elegance of architecture and gardens were influenced by the popularity of Zen Buddhism, which emphasized meditation over ritual. After the Onin War of 1477, Onin War of 1477, precipitated by conflict over succession, upon Yoshimasa's retirement, the shogunate exercised no power, and the provinces were controlled by independent regional lords who fought with each other. The regional lords also carried out trade with continental Asia. Then you have the emergence of Vietnam. The area of Vietnam was divided between two states. The Chinese influenced Annam in the north, and the Indian influenced Champa in the south. The Mongols extracted tribute from both states, but with the fall of the Han Empire, they began to fight with each other. The Ming ruled Annam through the puppet government for almost 30 years in the early 15th century, until the Amenes threw off the Ming control in 1428. By 1500, Annam was completely conquered the Champa and established a Chinese-style government all over Vietnam. And so, in conclusion, trade between China and Europe received active Mongol stimulation through the protection of routes and the encouragement of industrial industries. The Mongols ruled with an unprecedented openness, employing talented people in respective of their linguistic, ethnic, or religious affiliations, generating an exchange of ideas, techniques, and products across the breadth of Eurasia. Where Mongol military actively reached the limit of expansion, it stimulated local aspirations for independence. And in China, Korea, Annam, and Japan, the threat of Mongol attack and domination encouraged centralization of government, improved military techniques, and renewed stress on local cultural identity. Guys, if you have any questions, make sure you email me.